Everyone in Derell Heights admired Sarah Foster. She was the kind of woman who made perfection look effortless, a renowned psychiatrist with her own private practice, the founder of a local charity for troubled youth, and somehow still had time to maintain an immaculate Victorian home that regularly featured in architectural magazines. I'd watch her from my porch sometimes, tending to her garden of rare roses or driving off in her gleaming Mercedes. Her husband, Marcus, was equally impressive. Tall, athletic, with a brilliant smile that crinkled at the corners of his eyes. Their teenage son, Ethan, was a star athlete with full scholarship to Princeton, and their daughter, Lily, who had just turned 12, was already winning national piano competition awards. From my modest rental across the street, their lives seemed like something out of a television show. Perfect, polished, and completely out of reach. I was new to the neighborhood, a struggling writer who'd moved to the suburbs for the quiet and affordable rent. My novel was stalled somewhere around chapter 7, and my bank account was dwindling at an alarming rate. Maybe that's why Sarah took an interest in me. Neighbors should look out for each other, she said one day, appearing at my door with a basket of homemade bread and preserves. Besides, I've always had a soft spot for artists. That was the beginning of our strange relationship. She'd invite me over for dinner, introduce me to influential people in the community, even offered to help me with my rent when she noticed my car hadn't moved for days. I'd been conserving gas. I always declined the money, but accepted the dinners. Sarah was an incredible cook. Her meals were always elaborate, multi-course affairs featuring exotic ingredients and complex flavors I couldn't begin to identify. "It's just a hobby," she said with that modest smile, setting down plates that looked like they belonged in a 5-star restaurant. Marcus would pour wine, Ethan would talk about school, and Lily would sometimes play piano after dessert. It felt like I was being temporarily adopted into their perfect world. For a few hours, I could pretend I was part of something warm and stable, so different from my solitary existence. Then came the night of the storm. It was early October, and the weather forecast had been warning about severe thunderstorms for days. I stocked up on candles and non-perishables, checked my flashlights, and was settling in for a long night when the power went out. The darkness was immediate and absolute, the kind that makes familiar spaces feel suddenly alien. I was fumbling for a flashlight when I heard the first scream. It came from across the street, a high, desperate sound that cut through the howling wind. I rushed to my window, squinting through the rain-slashed glass, but could see nothing except the dark silhouette of the Foster's house. Another scream followed, then silence. I hesitated, phone in hand. Should I call the police? What if it was nothing, Lily having a nightmare perhaps, or someone reacting to the power outage? Sarah had mentioned that Lily was afraid of the dark. I didn't want to embarrass myself by overreacting. The wind picked up, rattling my windows, and I decided to wait. If I heard anything else, I'd call. Nothing came except the storm's fury, and eventually I went to bed, sleeping fitfully until morning broke clear and calm. The next day I saw Sarah in her garden as usual, pruning roses with her specialized shears. She waved cheerfully, looking as composed as ever in her crisp white blouse and tailored pants. "Quite a storm last night," I called out, studying her face for any signs of distress. "Terrible," she agreed, her smile unwavering. "Poor Lily was terrified. We ended up having a family slumber party in the living room." That explained the screams, I thought, relief washing over me. Just a scared child during a power outage. But in the days that followed, I didn't see Lily, or Ethan, or Marcus. Just Sarah moving through her routines with the same measured grace, tending the garden, leaving for work in her Mercedes, returning with groceries. A week passed. When I asked about her family during a chance encounter at the mailbox, her answer was smooth and practiced. Marcus took the kids to visit his mother in Vermont. She's been ill, and they wanted to spend time with her while they could. Made perfect sense, so why did it feel so wrong? That night, my heating system failed spectacularly. October had turned brutally cold, and within hours, my house was freezing. The repair company couldn't come until morning, leaving me facing a night of bone-chilling temperatures. Sarah, of course, came to the rescue. "Stay with me," she insisted after I explained my situation. "I've got the big house all to myself, with the family away. No sense in you freezing when I have 3 empty bedrooms." I hesitated. Something felt off about the whole situation, but I couldn't articulate what. And it was so cold. "Just for tonight," I agreed, packing an overnight bag. Sarah's house was even more impressive on the inside. Soaring ceilings, antique furniture, artwork that looked museum-worthy, but it had a strange stillness to it, as if the air itself was holding its breath. "You can take the guest room at the end of the hall," Sarah said, leading me upstairs. "It has its own bathroom and the best mattress in the house. Marcus always jokes that I care more about our guests' comfort than his." The guest room was beautiful. Cream-colored walls, a plush, king-size bed, and windows overlooking the backyard. But what caught my attention was the heavy bolt on the outside of the door. "That's unusual," I said, pointing. Sarah laughed lightly. "This house is over 100 years old. It was once used as a sanitarium, if you can believe it. Most of the original doors have those locks. We keep meaning to remove them, but renovation projects always seem to take a back seat to daily life." It was a reasonable explanation. Still, something about her delivery felt rehearsed. "Let me make us dinner," she said, changing the subject. "I've been experimenting with some new recipes, and I never get to cook properly when it's just me." Dinner was, as always, extraordinary. Sarah served a rich, complex stew that she said was a traditional Moroccan dish, followed by a dessert of poached pears in a spice wine reduction. The flavors were incredible. Deep, earthy, with hints of something I couldn't quite place. "What's in this?" I asked, savoring another spoonful of the stew. "It's delicious." "Family secret," she said with a wink, "but the key is long, slow cooking, breaking down the tissues until everything becomes one harmonious whole." After dinner, we had coffee in the living room where Sarah told me about her work with troubled adolescents. "The human mind is fascinating," she said, her eyes gleaming in the lamplight. "So resilient, yet so fragile. Push the right buttons, and even the strongest person can break apart at the seams." Her tone was academic and detached, the voice of someone discussing theoretical concepts rather than actual suffering. It made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't say why. When I finally went up to the guest room, exhaustion hit me like a wave. My limbs felt heavy, my thoughts sluggish. I barely managed to change into pajamas before collapsing into the bed. I woke up sometime in the night, disoriented and cotton-mouthed. The room was spinning slightly, and it took tremendous effort to lift my head. Had I drunk too much wine at dinner? No, I only had 1 glass. Then I heard it, a soft rhythmic sound coming from somewhere in the house, a wet, mechanical noise, like someone cutting through something dense and moist. I tried to get up, but my body felt impossibly heavy. The best I could manage was rolling onto my side, where I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a vent near the floor, partially obscured by the nightstand. The sound was coming from there, growing louder now, accompanied by a low humming. Sarah's voice, I realized, humming a lullaby as she worked. I must have drifted off again, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. My head felt clearer, though a dull headache pulsed behind my eyes. Had I dreamed the strange noises? Possibly. I'd been under stress lately, and stress could cause all sorts of disturbances. I pulled myself out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom. The face that greeted me in the mirror looked haggard. Pale skin, bloodshot eyes, a general look of unwellness. Something wasn't right. Whatever had affected me last night wasn't just wine. After showering, I felt marginally better. I dressed quickly and headed downstairs, eager to thank Sarah for her hospitality and return to my own house, where the heating company would be arriving soon. The house was silent. In the kitchen, I found a note propped up against a coffee mug. Had an early appointment. Help yourself to breakfast. There's quiche in the fridge. Lock up when you leave. S. The quiche looked professionally made, with a golden crust and perfect filling studded with red peppers and herbs. But my stomach turned at the thought of food. Instead, I poured myself water and tried to clear my head. That's when I noticed the basement door was ajar. I'd never been one for snooping, but something pulled me toward that door, a nagging sense that all the little oddities I'd noticed were connected to whatever lay below. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended into the dimly lit basement. It wasn't what I expected, no cobwebs or clutter, just an immaculately organized space with shelving units along the walls and a large freezer humming quietly in the corner. A workbench dominated the center of the room, its surface scrubbed clean but faintly stained in places. I approached the freezer, my heart hammering. This was wrong. I was invading Sarah's privacy. I should turn around, go upstairs, and leave. But I didn't. Instead, I lifted the heavy lid. Inside, neatly wrapped in butcher paper and labeled with dates, were packages, dozens of them, stacked with medical precision. One had partially unwrapped, revealing what looked like meat, dark red, marbled with fat. My stomach lurched. Sarah was an avid cook. Maybe she bought meat in bulk. But why the dates? And why did some packages have initials on them? Behind the freezer, something glinted in the dim light. I moved closer, squinting to see what it was. A wall of photographs, hidden from immediate view. Family portraits, vacation snapshots, candid moments of Marcus, Ethan, and Lily. But these weren't normal family photos. In each one, Sarah had meticulously cut out her own image, leaving a Sarah-shaped void beside each of her family members. And beside these, a newer set of photos of me, walking to my mailbox, sitting on my porch, working at my laptop by the window, all taken from a distance without my knowledge. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't right. None of this was right. A metallic clang from upstairs made me jump. The front door. Sarah was home. I scrambled up the basement stairs, trying to move silently. At the top, I hesitated, listening. Footsteps in the foyer, then the kitchen, the refrigerator door opening and closing. If I could just make it to the front door without her seeing me. I crept through the hallway, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure she would hear it. The front door was just ahead, my escape mere seconds away. "Did you sleep well?" Sarah's voice froze me in place. She stood in the kitchen doorway, still wearing her coat, a pleasant smile on her face. "Yes, thank you," I managed, my voice remarkably steady despite the terror coursing through me. "I was just heading out. The heating company should be at my place soon." "Without breakfast? I made that quiche specially for you." Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp, assessing. "I'm not hungry, but thank you. The dinner was more than enough." She took a step toward me. "Did you go somewhere this morning? You look unsettled." I forced a laugh. "Just tired, and I hate imposing." Another step. "It's no imposition. In fact, I was hoping you might stay another night. The weather report says it's going to drop below freezing again." "That's very kind, but I should really get back to my writing." I reached for the door handle, maintaining my fake smile. "Rain check?" Sarah moved with surprising speed, her hand closing over mine on the doorknob. "I insist." Her grip was like iron, her fingers digging into my wrist with bruising force. The pleasant mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "I saw the basement," I blurted out, desperation overriding caution. She didn't flinch, didn't release my hand. "Did you? And what did you think you saw?" "The freezer, the photos." I was babbling now, fear making my thoughts race. "Where's your family, Sarah? Where are they really?" Her smile returned, but different now, a predator's grin. "They're here. They've always been here. Parts of them, anyway." My blood turned to ice. "The meals? All those dinners?" "You have an excellent palate," she said, as if complimenting me on noticing a subtle spice in a dish. "Most people never identify the unique flavor profile. Human meat has a sweetness to it. Have you noticed? Especially the young cuts." I yanked my hand away and lunged for the door, throwing it open. Sarah didn't try to stop me this time. She didn't need to. My legs gave away as soon as I stepped onto the porch, my body betraying me as darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. The last thing I saw was Sarah standing over me, silhouetted against the morning sky. "The sedative takes about 12 hours to fully leave your system," she said conversationally. "You really shouldn't have gone into the basement. We could have had such a lovely arrangement." I woke in the basement, secured to what I now recognized as a butcher's table. The surface was cold against my back, the restraints tight around my wrists and ankles. My head still swam from whatever drug she had given me, but my mind was clear enough to understand the horror of my situation. Sarah moved around the space with practiced efficiency, arranging tools on a small tray beside me. Scalpels, clamps, a bone saw. She had changed into what looked like a surgical gown, her hair neatly covered with a cap. "You're awake. Good. I prefer it when they're conscious, for at least part of the process. The fear adds something to the meat, a tenderness that can't be replicated any other way." I struggled against the restraints, the leather cutting into my skin. "People will look for me." Sarah laughed, the sound devoid of warmth. "Will they? The struggling writer who barely leaves his house, who has no family nearby, no close friends in the area?" She picked up a scalpel, examining its edge. "I've been watching you for months. You're perfect. Isolated, self-contained, unlikely to be missed. The police think I'm a pillar of the community, a doctor who helps troubled children, who opens up her home to those in need." She leaned closer, her breath warm against my face. "Do you know how many people have disappeared from this neighborhood over the years? Not many. I'm careful, selective. Your family, I said, grasping at anything that might reach whatever humanity remained in her. What happened to them? Something flickered in her eyes, not remorse, but a kind of wistful nostalgia. Marcus was first. He'd discovered my little hobby and threatened to go to the police. I couldn't have that. She adjusted a leather strap across my chest. The children were more difficult. I did love them in my way, but they were becoming so much like their father. Suspicious, judgmental. She picked up a marker and began drawing lines on my exposed skin, marking cutting sites with clinical precision. I keep them close now. Parts of Ethan are still in the freezer. He was an athlete, all that lean muscle. Lily's heart was so pure, so tender. And Marcus, well, he was rather tough, but excellent for stews. My stomach heaved at her words, bile rising in my throat. She noticed my reaction and smiled. Don't worry, death itself is quite quick. It's the preparation afterward that takes time. Please, I begged, tears streaming down my face. Please don't do this. Sarah paused, her head tilting slightly, as if considering my plea. For a moment, hope flared in my chest. Then she picked up the scalpel again. I'm thinking of starting with your liver. It's my favorite organ. So rich, so versatile. Suddenly, the basement door burst open with a crash that seemed to shake the entire house. Sarah whirled around, the scalpel clutched in her hand like a weapon. 3 police officers stormed down the stairs, guns drawn. Police, drop the weapon. Sarah's face contorted with rage and disbelief. She lunged forward, the scalpel slashing through the air, and then came the deafening sound of gunshots. Her body jerked and crumpled, falling to the floor beside the table where I lay strapped down. As a female officer rushed to release me from the restraints, I sobbed with relief and confusion. How did you find me? Your heating company called us when they couldn't reach you, she explained, her voice gentle as she worked on the buckles. Said you'd made an emergency appointment but weren't answering your door or phone. When we checked your house, a neighbor mentioned seeing you go to Dr. Foster's last night. Another officer was examining the freezer, his face grim. Jesus Christ, he muttered, lifting one of the wrapped packages. We've been investigating disappearances in 3 counties, the female officer continued, helping me sit up. But we never had enough evidence to connect them to anyone specific. I looked at Sarah's body, crumpled on the concrete floor, blood pooling beneath her. The brilliant, charming woman who had welcomed me into her home, who had fed me meals made of her own family's flesh, who had planned to add me to her freezer, one carefully labeled package at a time. The investigation that followed revealed horrors beyond my imagination. The Foster family had indeed existed. There were school records for the children, employment history for Marcus. They had been real people with real lives before Sarah systematically removed them from the world and incorporated them into her grotesque hobby. The freezer contained remains that forensics later identified as belonging to 7 different individuals, including Marcus, Ethan, and Lily Foster. Additional DNA evidence was found through the house. Blood traces in the master bathroom, bone fragments in the garden soil, human fat residue in the kitchen drains. Sarah's journals, discovered hidden in a false wall in her office, detailed everything. Her growing boredom with family life, her first experimental taste, a homeless man she lured with promises of food and shelter. Her methodical elimination of her family and her plans for future acquisitions, including detailed notes about my habits, schedule, and physical attributes. I spent weeks in therapy trying to process what had happened, what I had eaten during those friendly neighborhood dinners. The nausea never fully subsided. Food became an ordeal. Each bite suspicious, each flavor potentially tainted with memories of Sarah's special recipes. I sold my novel 6 months later, a psychological thriller inspired by my experience, though heavily fictionalized. Critics called it disturbingly authentic and a haunting exploration of suburban horrors. They had no idea. I moved away from Derell Heights, away from the house across the street where nightmares had been served on fine china. But distance provided no real escape. Sometimes I still wake in the night, my mouth filled with the phantom taste of Sarah's cooking, my mind replaying her words with clinical precision. Human meat has a sweetness to it, haven't you noticed? Especially the younger cuts. And in those dark hours, I wonder about all the meals we share with others, the ingredients we never question, the secrets simmering just beneath the surface of normality, and the monsters who move among us, wearing the masks of perfect neighbors. Thanks for listening to my Dark Veil Tale. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. It really does help me grow this channel so I can make more content for your enjoyment. Also, check out the linked video for another creeper-style story from Dark Veil Tales.